Good evening. Good evening to all of you. Okay, good evening to all of you. We always enjoy seeing the fellowship and hearing the fellowship. And we thank you that you are here for our first Wednesday of the month of July. Here we are on July the 3rd. And we're thankful that you are here and we're able to continue to work our way throughout these summer months, June, July, and August, and our summer series. Of course, this is a holiday week. Tomorrow will be in the 4th of July, and no doubt we have a lot of members traveling for that, away with family and friends and elsewhere. I know Josh Webster is away preaching tonight. He's speaking over in the Decatur area. So a lot of people who are on the roads tonight, we want to keep them in our prayers and in their travels and the safety of everyone tomorrow, of course, throughout the holiday. And we hope that you have a wonderful day. We're going to begin in just a moment, but I'm so thankful that Laws Rushing is here with us to speak this evening. Our summer series this year is on one another, and Laws Rushing is the president at Mars Hill Bible School, and I met him just a little over a year ago. I went to graduation at Heritage Christian University, and he was the speaker that day. And when Kirk Brothers introduced him, he introduced him as the new president at Mars Hill Bible School. So I was excited to hear that, and I knew then if the lesson that he preached on that day was a sample of what we were in for, what he could bring to Mars Hill and the Florence community, then we were in for good things. And so far that has proven to be true. Everything I hear about our brother who's going to speak before us this evening has been positive, and he's doing a great job, and we're thankful for him and his family and to have them here in this community and here with us. His topic tonight is serve one another. And I just want to read a little biography about him that you can find on the website, and then we'll turn it over. Dr. Laws Rushing II serves as a president of Mars Hill Bible School. Before beginning his tenure at MHBS, he served as president of Riverside Christian Academy in Fayetteville, Tennessee. He is a native of West Tennessee and has extensive leadership experience in education, ministry, and nonprofit organizations. He was recently named Lincoln County's Rotarian of the Year and served as club president. Dr. Rushing is married to Stacy, his wife of 14 years. She is here with us tonight. They have a 6th grade daughter, River Bell, and a son, Arlo. And they're all here with us tonight, his wife and daughter and son. So we're thankful that they could come and be with us tonight as well. One other thing I was going to mention, I found it interesting that he mentioned when I first met him that Ken Butterworth baptized him. And he recently, or not recently, but some time ago, was a preacher at the Blackwater Macedonia Church of Christ. Congregation in the area where I'm from has a great name, and it's also where Tessa Hostetter grew up, her home congregation. So I love how the brotherhood is small. It always fits together. But brother, come and preach to us this evening.
Thank you. All right. Already getting off to a great start. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me? I can hear myself. Well, I think that, okay. If we start again, then I'll start again. Thank you, Ricky, for those kind words. It is so good to be with you tonight. Honored to be asked to come and to speak. And on behalf of the Mars Hill Bible School family, we send our greetings, and it's so good to hear from Brother Ricky and to see the good work that he does here at Wood Avenue. And I've heard so many good things about this congregation. We have visited here in the past and enjoyed the service and the fellowship, and of course have made some friendships with some of your members, and look forward to meeting more folks and to having even more friendships with the Wood Avenue Church of Christ. So we're honored to be here, and I just so appreciate what Ricky does. I know he's doing a fantastic job for the church here in the outreach and also in ministering week to week for you. As was announced, I was given the topic of servanthood or serving one another. And so I was suggested the passage in John chapter 13, and we'll get to that. But I wanted to, first of all, point out the picture. That's an iconic picture, isn't it? Most of us are familiar with this painting. And John chapter 13 has to do with things related to this table. This is commonly known as what? The Last Supper, at least the painting is. And if you know anything about historical Christianity, and if you know anything about Judaism of this time, then you know that this picture is really not very historical. I mean, this is a Renaissance version of what happened in the Last Supper. This is not very historically accurate in the sense that the table isn't a table that they would have used. They wouldn't have been sitting up like this in chairs. They would have been reclining on the floor. But this is an iconic picture, isn't it, of what happened. And so tonight we're studying John chapter 13, which has to do with another thing that happened that night. And there really is a lot of space dedicated in the New Testament to this night before Jesus was crucified. I mean, if you look at it, you have the synoptics give a lot of detail as to what happens with the Last Supper. And you also have John chapter 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, which has to do with the last night of Jesus' earthly life before his crucifixion. But there's an interesting story related to this because the great genius Leonardo da Vinci painted this. And so this was from the church. The Catholic Church asked him to paint this painting. And so there was a priest that was put in charge of coming to see Leonardo da Vinci to make sure he was painting this painting. And so he would come to check on da Vinci. And what was interesting is that he would come to da Vinci's studio, and there he would find Leonardo, and he found him, and he was sitting before a blank canvas. And so the priest would be, "How's it going?" Leonardo da Vinci just kind of, "It's going pretty good." He'd come back the next day. What would he find da Vinci doing? Sitting in front of the blank canvas. This went on time and time again. He kept coming back. He kept asking da Vinci, "Well, when's it going to be done? When are you going to start on this painting that everybody's waiting on?" Finally, he comes one day and he finds the painting completed. He asks da Vinci about it, and he finds out that da Vinci has painted him as Judas. That's what happens when you are a nuisance to a genius. He literally became Judas in the picture, which is the guy over there kind of crouching behind there. We are given a blank canvas in this life, aren't we? Every day is a blank canvas. And so what we do with it is up to us. And it can start out very, very ordinary. But what God gives us the opportunity is to do something quite extraordinary with it. And that's really what Christian love is about. And we talked about serving one another, and that's what my topic is tonight, but that is rooted in something else. What is service rooted in? I guess this has a little short. That's what I'm finding. Okay, here we go. Service is rooted, what do you think? It's okay. So, where were we? Okay. Service is rooted in something else. It's rooted in John chapter 13, 34, and 35. And that's really the linchpin verse of the whole chapter, where Jesus says this: "A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you. And by this, all will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." Yes, we are asked to serve, and that is my topic tonight. But ultimately, serving is rooted in love, isn't it? And so tonight, my title is Profound Love in Ordinary Moments. First of all, thinking about what Jesus says here in John chapter 13, 34, and 35, he says, "A new commandment." This is a commandment of God, that we love one another and that we serve one another. I remember I had a little elderly lady that I worked with. I was a chaplain in a hospital, and she was about 98 years old. And I would come and wait on her, minister to her, pray with her. And one day I came up to her and I just said, just off the cuff one day, I said, "You know what? I love you." And then she said this: "You better, or you'll go to hell." And I said, "You know what? You're right. It's a commandment. It's a commandment that we love one another." And so this commandment here is a commandment for you and me. Remember when Jesus told his disciples, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe whatsoever things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even until the end of the age." So Jesus wants us to keep this commandment, doesn't he? Another thing that he says, and this is breathtaking. This is breathtaking commandments here. Because he says it's a new one, right? Well, it sounds like an old one. I thought we're supposed to love one another. Yeah, love your neighbor as yourself. But Jesus says, here's the new commandment: love one another as I have loved you. That's different, isn't it? All of a sudden, love thy neighbor as thyself. Jesus is saying, nope, I want you to love each other as I have loved you. Well, how much is that? How much has Jesus loved us? That's a big commandment, isn't it? That's a different commandment. That's a new commandment. Recently, I saw on the internet people were passing around the golden rule, and they wanted to make it look like the golden rule was in all the religions. But if you look at all the religions, it's not that. Like if you look at Confucius, he says, "Don't do unto others as you would not want done unto you." And most of those are in a prohibitive mode. And a lot of times we think of the golden rule in a prohibitive sense. Well, I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm not going to steal from somebody. I'm not going to lie to somebody. I'm not going to kill somebody. I'm not going to do all these things. It's a bunch of knots, right? But that's not the golden rule, is it? No, Jesus says, do unto others. So it's a proactive command. Jesus isn't just saying don't do bad stuff to other people. Jesus is saying you need to be actively doing good in other people's lives. That's the golden rule. So Jesus is asking more from his disciples than what's expected of the rest of the world. That's what the rest of the world, hey, respect me. Let's have some respect. Let's have some civil discourse. Jesus wants us to do more than that. He wants us to love one another as he has loved us. And he says this, so he's intensifying, he's deepening the commandment. And he's also saying this is a defining characteristic of the church. This is the defining characteristic of my disciples, that you love one another as I have loved you. Profound love, isn't it? Profound love. When we think about profound love, a lot of times what we want to think about are those big moments. And when we think about Jesus and we think about his profound love, because he says, love them as I have loved you, we think about how profound Jesus' love is. What do we immediately think of? We think of the biggest thing that he ever did for us, right? And he did something so marvelous, so magnificent, magnanimous, so huge, right? Jesus said, John chapter 15, greater love hath no man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. Wow. That's great love, isn't it? Profound love. That's the kind of love that makes me feel so small and incapable. I'm reminded of a story, and this is a July 4th story for you, about a boat called the Dorchester in World War II. It was a part of a convoy of 3 ships. And on this ship, there were over 900 men on this boat. And they were off the coast of the northern Atlantic. They were in cold water. The Coast Guard warned the captain. And so he warned the soldiers, the sailors that were on that ship, and he says, guys, you need to sleep in your clothes and you need to be sleeping in your life jackets. Well, a lot of them thought, well, we've been in dangerous waters before, and it's really, really hot on this boat. In fact, it's really hot. So a lot of the men were like, you know what? I got to get some sleep. And they didn't wear their clothes and they didn't wear their life jackets. And so about 12:55 a.m., they were torpedoed by a German submarine. And if you can imagine this, the electricity being knocked out on a boat in the northern Atlantic with 900 men panicking. Wow. And on that boat, there were 4 ministers, 4 chaplains that were part of the Navy. And they kept their cool, and they handed out life jackets to the men, and eventually they took off their own life jackets and gave it to the men. A witness said this: as I swam away from the ship, I looked back. The flares lit everything up. The bow came up high and slid under. The last thing I saw was the 4 chaplains were up there praying for the safety of the men. They had done everything that they could. I did not see them again. They themselves did not have a chance without their life jackets. These 4 men sacrificed themselves in World War II for their fellow sailors. They offered profound love in an extraordinary moment, didn't they? I mean, this is a moment that defies all rational expectation. This is when people either give up, freak out, or they become heroes. And these 4 chaplains did something extraordinary, didn't they? They gave their lives for their fellow sailors. But here's the thing that's so special about Jesus, is that not only did he give us an example of a profound love and extraordinary circumstance by giving his life on the cross, he also gave profound love in a very ordinary, mundane moment. And once again, Jesus was given a blank canvas on the evening in which he was betrayed, and he truly painted a masterpiece of profound love in a very ordinary moment. Profound love. Let's look at John chapter 13. What does Jesus do with this moment? Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come and that he should depart from this world, and that the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And supper being ended, the devil, having now put in the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from God and he went to God, he riseth up from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. And after he poureth water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. The first thing that this passage mentions is what this feast and what this night and what Jesus' work would be associated with. And this is context for the Jewish people, and it's context for us to understand that something here is happening that's a bigger story. This is before the Passover. It's connected with the Passover. So Jesus dies in connection with the historical event of the Passover. So Jesus is communicating, and God is communicating a message to the world in this moment, isn't he? You remember the story of the Passover. It's the time in which Israel is delivered from Egypt. They're emancipated, they're given freedom, but it comes through the blood of a lamb, doesn't it? The blood is put on the doorpost, and the Spirit of God passes over that door and offers mercy to that household. What did John the Baptist call Jesus? Behold, the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world. So Jesus, the Passover Lamb, 1 Corinthians 7:5, is doing something for us in the event of the cross. It says also in this passage that his hour had come. And that is a very distinctive John statement, because we find it in other places in John, because John says his hour had not yet come. John chapter 2, remember Jesus is at the wedding of Cana, and Jesus' mother comes to Jesus and says, hey, they've ran out of wine. And he said, woman, my hour has not yet come. In John chapter 7, Jesus' brothers come to him. They say, hey, you should go to Jerusalem. He says, my hour has not yet come. But now, John says his hour had come. This is the moment. And look at this beautiful statement. He loved his own until the end. What a beautiful statement that is about Jesus' love, isn't it? Wouldn't you want that said about your own dedication and commitment to your spouse, or to your child, or to your church family? He loved them until the end. That's profound love, isn't it? That's profound service. It also says in verse 2, the supper, this happens after the supper. So what happened previous to this moment? The Lord's Supper was instituted. That holy supper that we partake of every Lord's Day. And that's what we look back and remember, that we have been emancipated, not from Egypt, but we have been free from sin and death and suffering. It says in verse 3 that God had given all things unto him. So Jesus was fully aware of everything, of his place in history, about what he was going to do, where he was going. He knew it all. And that's when he does the unthinkable. He gets up and he washes his disciples' feet. The first thing that I kind of think about when I think about the disciples and that Jesus finally gets up after they've eaten, these guys had been sitting around with some filthy feet the whole meal. Have you ever thought about that? Here they were, Jesus' disciples, and they're sitting around a table eating, reclining mostly on the ground, their feet near each other, and they've got some nasty, filthy Jerusalem feet. And none of them had thought to get the water and to wash their feet before they ate. That's a little bit stubborn, isn't it? I remember when I was a little boy, I got a twin brother. So we had to share everything. It's frustrating. We used to joke we were not only roommates, but we were womb mates. But we shared a room growing up. Yeah, you got that one. You liked that one, didn't you? We were roommates. We were roommates our whole life. But I remember there were certain nights where this would happen. One of us we would both get into our beds and the lights were left on. And then we'd be like, well, you gonna turn out the light? Oh, I don't need to turn out the light. I can sleep just like it is. And we would try to wait each other out to see who would finally give in to turning off the light. Now, I bet you can think of a similar scenario in your life where you were stubborn and where you were trying to wait it out on somebody else because you didn't want to humble yourself and didn't want to get into it, right? These disciples were so stubborn. They're sitting around with dirty feet. And here's the thing. Not only are they refusing to wash each other's feet, they're refusing to wash their teacher's feet. Their master, their Lord, the person that they say they follow. In their pride and in their stubbornness, they're saying, we're not going to wash anybody's feet. This was a custom. Young people, I know this sounds weird that I'm talking about feet tonight. But this was a custom. Everybody wore sandals back then. And so it was a custom that if you came to somebody's house as a guest, one of the first things that you would do was offer them water to wash their feet so that they could be comfortable and not have the filth of the city on their feet as they enjoyed food and fellowship. Jesus encounters this in Luke chapter 7. He goes to the Pharisee's house, Simon, and he goes there, you remember? And he's eating with him, and the sinful woman comes in and she washes Jesus' feet with her hair and with her tears. And Jesus says, Simon, you're so disturbed by this, but yet you have yet to offer me water for my feet. It was a custom, but the disciples were prideful and didn't want to wash each other's feet. Didn't want to serve each other. So tonight I want to give you some ways that we can serve one another. How do we start to serve one another in humility and so on? How do we do that? So the first thing we have to do in showing this profound love is humility. Showcasing humility is a way that we as Christians serve each other as Jesus served his own disciples. Because when Jesus was serving and washing his disciples' feet, what was he showcasing about his character? He was humble. He was humble. And if there was any person on earth that shouldn't be washing feet, it was Jesus. Do you get that? He's the creator of the universe. He is the founder of the church. He is the founder. He is the teacher. He is Lord, and He's the one who's washing feet. And if Jesus is washing feet, what does that mean for me? That I need to be humble, that I need to serve. Paul says it in a cosmic way in Philippians chapter 2:5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who made Himself of no reputation, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, made Himself of no reputation and became a bondservant for us in the likeness of men. And in the likeness of men became obedient even unto death, the death of the cross. If Jesus humbled Himself cosmically to come down from heaven to earth to be a servant and to wash feet, then I need to be on my hands and feet doing the same for people. So being humble is a part of that. Another thing is that we need servitude. Jesus is serving in this moment, and what's interesting is probably what spurred it. John doesn't talk about it, but Luke does. In Luke chapter 22, verse number 24, it gives this interesting detail to this night. It said that there arose a strife among the disciples about who was going to be the greatest. Oh. So there His disciples were when Jesus is about to be arrested, brutally crucified, and Jesus has been warning them all the way to Jerusalem that this is going to happen. And what are they thinking about? He's just instituted the Lord's Supper. And they are arguing about who is going to be the greatest. And what does Jesus do? He gets up and washes their feet. Wow. One of the thoughts that comes to me immediately is, didn't Jesus already have this lesson with His disciples? If you look back into the Gospels, you will find that this sermon had been preached over and over to His disciples. Remember when James and John's mother came up to Jesus a few chapters before in the Synoptics? And she's just like any other mother. She's got ambition for her children. She wants her children to be well taken care of. She wants the Messiah to give them favor. And she says, hey, Jesus, please let one sit on your left and let one sit on your right. Let them sit in the grandeur of your magnificence. And Jesus taught the lesson then, didn't He? That whosoever desires to be great among you, let them do what? Serve. But for some reason, they didn't get it. And I suspect I don't always get it, and you don't always get it. We have to hear this sermon over and over again, and we have to sit down and watch Jesus wash feet to get it. Because we confuse greatness with all these things that don't matter. What matters? What's great? Well, we watch TV and we watch social media and we look at our magazines. I'll tell you what we think is great. Not washing feet. What we think is great is when people have power. That's what we think is great. If you're mighty, if you have political power, you're great. That's what's great, isn't it? Or maybe materialism. If you have a lot of money, that's great. We want some of that. I had a good brother. He always told me, he says, hey, money doesn't buy happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves, right? But yet we're so impressed by what people wear and by what people drive and what houses they live in. You remember that show? Here's one for you real folks. Maybe you need to YouTube this, young people. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Then it went into the Generation X. We had cribs. Y'all can YouTube that. We're so impressed, aren't we? Okay, what else is great? Okay, talent. We love it when somebody can write a song and sing a song. We love it. We're impressed by it. We think it's great. Or when someone's really, really intelligent. Who was the most important person according to Time magazine in the 20th century? Einstein, because he was so brilliant. But Jesus doesn't talk about any of those things. He doesn't. Whosoever desires to be great among you, let him be a servant. And here they were arguing again about that very same thing. He was also a person of action. He did something. He wasn't just talking about it. Paul says, let no one deceive you with empty words. Jesus isn't just talking about things, he's doing things, isn't he? But here's another thing. This is in the face of known betrayal to Jesus. What do you do with betrayal? We've all felt it, every one of us. You've been betrayed. You've been talked about behind your back. Someone's cheated on you. Someone's lied about you. Someone's talked about you. Someone's done all those things to you. And that's what's happening to Jesus in this moment. And what does he do with it? In the face of betrayal, what does Jesus do with it? It's breathtaking, isn't it? Someone once said this, when you learn to sit at the table with your Judas, then you begin to know the love of Christ. But he just didn't sit at the table, did he? He just didn't sit with Judas. He got up and went over to a water basin and then washed his filthy feet in front of everybody. What do we do with our betrayal? We try to qualify our goodness, don't we? Who we're going to be good to? Well, they don't deserve my goodness. Whoever is out there on the street, they deserve to be hungry. They deserve to be homeless. They don't work. We qualify it in 100 different ways. Jesus doesn't give us that luxury. Jesus does not qualify his goodness in any way. He washes Judas's feet. That was the most despicable person that you could think of at that day and in that hour in Jesus' life. And what does he do? He washes his feet. The power of an ordinary moment. Verses 6 and following. Then cometh Simon Peter. Peter saith unto him, Lord, dost thou wash my feet? Jesus answered and said, what I do thou knowest not, but thou shalt know hereafter. So Jesus says here that you're going to know something by doing this. You're going to know something by seeing me wash your feet. There is a revelation that can happen by serving people. You will know something, he says. And isn't that the promise that Jesus gives us in Matthew chapter 25 when we feed the hungry, when we give drink to those who are thirsty, when we visit those who are in prison? He says, if you do it unto the least of these, you do it unto whom? Unto me. Christ reveals himself in the beggar. He reveals himself. And he reveals himself when we serve others. And it also reveals who we are, doesn't it? That's the scarier thing. Because I can be calloused. I can be selfish. I can be all those things. humility, servitude, and action. These are the ways that we wash our disciples' feet. I put this picture up there for a reason. This was a part of the Just Us campaign for the Super Bowl that gave different scenes of people washing feet in a commercial. And my job tonight is not discuss whether that commercial was good or bad, but that's a striking image, isn't it, of someone washing someone's feet in front of a Planned Parenthood. Striking, isn't it? And guess what? It had a visceral effect on America. There were people who were outraged. They did not like this picture. Why? Because we don't want to wash feet. We don't want to go there into the hard moments with other people. We want to resist it, don't we? The world wants to resist it. They don't want to see Jesus as the person who does this. They were rejecting it. People were rejecting these pictures because it hits too close to home, doesn't it? Because Jesus is asking us to do things like that, to stand with people in difficult moments, and if you will, dirty moments, to be there with them, to help them, to counsel them, to love them, to wash their feet and serve them in difficult moments. Jesus says in verses 12 and 13, "You call me Lord." You call me Lord. So that means something, doesn't it? If you call Jesus Lord, that means you need to be serving somewhere. I need to be serving somewhere. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father. If you call Jesus Lord, you need to be washing feet, which means I need to be humble. I need to be serving. And I need to be a person of action. In verse 14, it says we're called to serve. Jesus says it exactly as this. Listen to this. "If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet." Now, I don't know if we need to break out the water basin tonight, but if you would refuse it, I don't know if you can call Jesus Lord. Because that's what he did. And I'm not asking you to literally wash feet unless it's needed. But we should be doing more than that. Jesus did more than wash feet, didn't he? Jesus served in many capacities in his life. Look at verses 15 and 16. "For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you." Jesus has left us the perfect example. We need to follow him into service. And he also gives us this, a promise, a blessing. Verse 17, "And if you know these things, and if you do these things," right? "Happy are ye if you do them." That is a great promise, isn't it? I guarantee it, if you find somebody that's willing to wash people's feet in Jesus' name, if you can find someone who's serving in the name of Christ, I guarantee it, you're going to find a happy person. Because Jesus promises it. That if we're willing to serve him and serve each other and love one another, we're going to be happy. And verse 35 says it like this. "New commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you. And by this all will know that you are my disciples." How does the world know if we are a disciple of Jesus? It's whether we have enough love to serve in that way. Tomorrow, it's 4th of July. You'll get an opportunity to serve somebody. But God is going to give you a blank canvas called tomorrow. We saw what Jesus did with it. Not only did he offer profound love, an extraordinary moment, and gave himself on the cross and died for us, which is incredible and beyond anybody's ability to even know, but he also offered us an example of profound love in a very ordinary moment. Just after supper, when no one else wanted to do the dishes, when no one else wanted to clean the house, when no one else wanted to wash the car, when no one else wanted to do something to help the poor downtown, when no one else wanted to do, that's when we have the opportunity. That's when we have the opportunity to stand up and to get the water and the basin and the towel. What will you do with the blank canvas that God has given you? Won't you serve Him? Thank you for your time. And let me pray, say a prayer for us. Father God, we are so humbled when we read your Son Jesus' life. And we know that we aspire to His example. We call Him Lord. So Lord, just help us to aspire to the heights of His love, not only in extraordinary moments, but most importantly, in the ordinary moments of every day. Help us to serve one another. It's through your Son Jesus' holy, divine, and beautiful name that we pray. Amen. Thank you for your time.